internet friends! Welcome to Tama Bites, a series where instead of looking at an entire game or a broader aspect of the franchise, we zoom way in on one element of game design and how that helps build the RPG adventure aspect of Pokemon games. Today we're taking a bite out of shiny hunting. Scarlet and Violet brought some interesting changes to shiny hunting compared to other entries in the series. Most notably that the shiny noise, the indicator noise, is completely gone when a shiny Pokemon spawns in the overworld, and there's only an indicator when you actually encounter that Pokemon in battle. Couple this with a lot of Generation 9 Pokemon having barely distinguishable shiny forms from their regular coloration, and it's got people overcome with anxiety about missing a shone. Is GameFreak doing this on purpose to discourage people from shiny hunting? Is shiny hunting the wrong way to play a Pokemon game from the developer's point of view? Well, to answer this question, we need to take a look at the role shinies and shiny hunting has played in the series in the past, and whether this practice has been encouraged or discouraged by the mechanic. Unlike mechanics like EVs and IVs, where GameFreak introduced them as back-end structures that ensured that Pokemon would be statistically individuals from each other, regardless of species or level, and originally GameFreak didn't intend players to be able to see or influence these values, shiny hunting and influencing shininess has actually been mechanically reinforced in almost every game since their introduction. Suddenly, it's much brighter! In Pokemon Gold and Silver, shininess was determined by DVs, which were passed down from parent Pokemon through breeding. So if you had a shiny parent, you could pretty easily and reliably breed more shiny Pokemon. Additionally, Crystal had the Odd Egg, which had a boosted shiny odds of 10%. So that, combined with the red Gyarados encounter in the story, meant that players had a pretty direct way to get shiny Pokemon and thus breed more shiny Pokemon with enough persistence. This was changed when the next games in the series were released, Ruby and Sapphire. Personality values were introduced, and so were secret IDs. The base odds of encountering a wild shiny Pokemon didn't decrease in these games, but you could no longer pass shininess down through breeding in the same way as you could in Gold and Silver. And they didn't come up with anything to replace that mechanic either. The Gen 3 games are pretty much the only main series Pokemon games where shinies exist that do not have any built-in methods of increasing your odds, outside of exploits and oversights. They reversed course on this pretty quickly though, and in Gen 4, two new methods of boosting your odds were introduced, the Pokéradar and the Masuda method. These weren't explained to the player or anything outside of Masuda's personal blog. You weren't explicitly encouraged to spend time looking for shiny Pokemon this way, but if a player really wanted a shiny and was willing to put in the time, learn some secret techniques on the internet, and jump through a few hoops, they were more likely to be rewarded. The odds remaining so low, though, meant that it was going to remain a niche activity in the game that most people weren't going to bother to do. And instead, most people just hacked them in because they look cool. But still, rather than discourage players from shiny hunting at all, GameFreak has continued to reinforce shiny hunting mechanically. And in each new game, more methods were added that brought this more to the forefront. The shiny charm was introduced in Generation 5 as a reward for Pokédex completion, which permanently boosted your odds of finding a shiny. And in Generation 6, the odds of finding one at all were raised for everyone throughout the entire game and have remained that way in subsequent games. So not only have shiny hunting methods been built into the game intentionally since the introduction of shinies themselves, shiny Pokemon have steadily become more accessible to the average player, and thus have become a more legitimate post-game activity than before. Not only does raising the odds probably combat some of the hacking that people were doing, but it also seems to create sort of a Skinner box effect, where players are rewarded just frequently enough for the effort of shiny hunting that they're encouraged to repeat the activity more and more. So now it's not just a few niche players that are putting in absurd amounts of time and effort to get a few Pokemon of a different color, but it's nearly everyone. And it makes for pretty good viral marketing to have players posting about their shiny encounters on social media. So I think it's a win-win. Players aren't getting bored of shinies yet, more people can get them without hacking, and it gives the game more real estate on your Twitter and Facebook feeds, as people brag about their latest shiny catches. Sure, there are some old school gatekeepers that feel that shinies have been devalued by this, and I admit I felt that way in the past, that they're not special anymore because they're so easy to get now. But if you took something like the lottery and then just started drawing more winners constantly, and suddenly everyone was winning $1 million, of course some people are going to feel ripped off. But more people will ultimately just end up happy that they won, and probably also more people will start playing the lottery because it seems like winning is more attainable. And I think most people who shiny hunt today compared to the Game Boy era, where people were much much more concerned about things like collectibles and exclusivity. They're not really motivated by rarity or social value necessarily, but rather just by the conditioning of semi-variable frequency of reward and the beautiful aesthetics of the shiny Pokemon themselves. I gotta admit, it's pretty fun to plan a team around variable Pokemon colors and put together just the right combo of Pokemon that look aesthetic. So that brings us to Scarlet and Violet. I don't think that shiny hunting is meant to be discouraged by the lack of shiny indication in the overworld, but rather that they're subtly changing how players engage with it, and with the game in general as it grows into its new open world genre. There are going to be some growing pains, and I think Pokemon Legends Arceus, or Arceus, was maybe a testing ground for some of these things. In those games, rather than an endless expanse of open world, with no loading screens in between, each area was its own enclosed level, and as a result, they could allow players to glide endlessly within the levels, the draw distance was way increased, and the same group of Pokemon spawns remained in each area the entire time that it was loaded in, without ever despawning once the player got a certain distance away. So if a Pokemon was shiny way below you on the ground, or you raced past it on your Weirder, you could see the sparkle, turn around and catch it with no repercussion. But now that the entire map is accessible continuously, and it's not split up into submaps like it was before, things have had to change a lot. Draw distance is way shorter, you can't glide very long at all without losing altitude, and Pokemon spawn and despawn based on their proximity to the player, so that the game isn't trying to juggle and keep track of too many Pokemon at once. The game already has performance issues and slowdown as it is. Imagine how much worse it would be if the game had an entire region's worth of Pokemon constantly spawned. But you can still move super fast on your ride Pokemon. So suppose a shiny Pokemon spawned, and you race past it on your bike, catching the shiny sparkle out of the corner of your eye. You have momentum, so you can't stop dead, you have to keep going and then turn around and come back. But if you got too far away during that time, the Pokemon will have despawned before you can get to it. That would be incredibly frustrating. So I think that is the main reason that there's no longer a shiny indicator on the overworld. So you don't realize that you've missed a shiny you never could have gotten in the first place if this had happened to you. I think it's also probably why a majority of the shiny Pokemon in this game are barely distinguishable from their non-shiny counterparts. If you realize that you were missing out on a shiny every few minutes, I think that the game would be a lot more frustrating and a lot less fun to most people. But if you never realize that one spawned at all, then you'll still just be excited the next time you actually see one. Scarlet and Violet also changed the dynamic of shiny hunting itself compared to Legends Arceus. In these games, there are a couple new ways of influencing shiny odds that are not exploits or oversights, and these are primarily sandwiches and outbreaks. I think that they really didn't intend for people to be able to farm outbreaks the way people figured out that you could, by respawning the outbreak either by traveling far enough away and coming back, or by loading and unloading the picnic. I think again, this is just kind of a consequence of the game being seamlessly open world rather than limited to submaps, and spawns just have to be deloaded and then reloaded in most circumstances. So rather than punishing the player by diminishing the number of remaining Pokemon in the outbreak every time a Pokemon is unloaded, again they opted for the thing that just makes the most sense and just refresh the spawns every time the player gets close enough to the outbreak again. This makes it pretty easy to raise the shiny odds of an outbreak by knocking out 60-ish Pokemon, and then reloading the remaining outbreak Pokemon over and over and over again. I think instead, this was just intended to be a set number of rolls for shiny Pokemon that increased the fewer remaining rolls you got, but instead it ended up being super easy to manipulate. Same with the other spawn manipulation methods that I've seen. I think that this is not something that they really could have avoided, but it's also not really something that they probably intended for people to do. Instead, I think that they maybe wanted it to require slightly more skill to notice shiny Pokemon on the overworld by playing Spot the Difference, especially in an outbreak. Also, Herba Mystica is required for boosting shiny odds with sandwiches, which, again, without other exploits, is only obtainable by winning really high-level raids, which are really difficult and locked to the post-game. Basically, if shiny Pokemon are now more abundant than ever, due to the high volume of simultaneous spawns in the overworld, combined with the increased odds from what they were originally, I think maybe part of keeping shinies interesting to people and keeping them from losing their novelty, they meant for it to take slightly more than just patience to get a shiny Pokemon this time around. I think it's meant to be a test of skill in raids, or a test of perception in additions to patience in the overworld, which I think personally does kind of make shiny hunting a little bit more engaging. Although it can also give me eye strain when a majority of the Pokemon are barely a different color than they originally are, and so many of the Pokemon in this game are also microscopic. Today, while I ask people to subscribe and hit that bell icon and send me more suggestions for future Tama Bites, I'm going to do a little show and tell and show off this Think Chip Ash Pokemon figure. This was in that ancient Think Chip Battle Stadium video I made a million years ago, and since then I've gotten it signed by Veronica Taylor. I know Sarah Natachini has technically been Ash longer at this point, but I stopped watching the anime shortly after they replaced Veronica Taylor, so to me she will always just be Ash. Also, she's the voice of the Ash that's this figure. Are you guys sad that Ash is gonna retire in the anime? I can't believe it, you guys.